It was a good time for me because I had, I'd only done two movies. One was a small British movie, Shopping, starred Jude Law. Then I'd done Mortal Kombat, and I'd had a big success. And the way Hollywood works is, you have a success, you get a little more kind of freedom. So I was offered a bunch of scripts. I was offered X-Men, the first X-Men movie, but they were in a terrible rush and they wanted to just go, 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 go. And I felt it would compromise the movie if we just rushed straight into it. And then I was offered this great script, Soldier, and then I was also offered Event Horizon. And I really loved both Event and Soldier, and it was a really hard decision to make. But I ended up making Soldier at Warner Brothers. We cast Kurt Russell, and he said, I want to spend a year getting into shape. And as soon as he did that, I was like, oh, I've got a year now. I wonder what's happening with Event Horizon. So we circled back to Paramount. They still hadn't set the movie up. So I ended up making Event Horizon basically while Kurt Russell was getting into fabulous shape for Soldier. It was kind of a blank canvas, which in many ways is very liberating, but also I was working within a genre that I love, which is kind of science fiction horror, where there have been so many great movies. So you've got this blank canvas to create whatever you want, but at the same time, there's the pressure that you're entering into a world where great directors have worked before and have made great movies. So how are you even going to get into the same league as them? Never mind do better than them. So there was a lot of pressure for me personally to kind of come up with a visual style that I felt would equal, what Ridley Scott had done with Alien, for example. It was a great experience. I mean, I loved it. I was getting all the toys in the toy box to play with. Shopping had been a very low budget European film. Mortal Kombat had been, for like a big action visual effects movie, relatively low budget within the studio system. So Event Horizon was really my first kind of fully loaded studio movie. We pretty much had nearly all the sound stages at Pinewood Studios to build the Event Horizon in. We built ambitious sets. I got to stick techno cranes into those sets, which is the first time I'd ever worked with a techno crane. I had a first-class British crew. I had an amazing cast. It was great. We got to shoot on the Bond stage, which it sounds more glamorous than it really is, because the Bond stage is basically just a big metal shed with a concrete floor, and we were shooting in the wintertime. So everything would just freeze. I had to make the movie in a year period because I had to go on to Soldier, which was, that was something that I had imposed on the production, so I'm not complaining about that. And then, of course, in post-production, we had this crunch because we were brought forward to release in the summertime to take the place of Titanic, which wouldn't have been my first choice. But, when you spend tens of millions of dollars of somebody else's money, you don't get to make those kind of decisions. The artists that we drew from, Bruegel and Bosch, and particularly Joel Peter Wittgen, the American photographer, these were big influences on the look of the film, and I think it was the right direction to go. Rather than just having a production designer go, oh, I'm going to imagine a spaceship and draw up a few designs of a different spaceship, and do you like this one? Do you like that one? I think we made a lot of effort to go and kind of be influenced by some great artists. And I think that baked a slightly different look into the movie that I think has stood the test of time. And I think one of the things that helped as well is we were one of the last big model shows. The spaceships were all big models that we shot with motion control. So they weren't CG creations. I think if we built all of the spaceships in CG, it would be a terribly dated looking movie by now. But because we were working with the great Richard Urasich, who had done Blade Runner, Richard was a great believer in doing things practical. So we built giant models of the spaceships, huge models. And he was a big fan of building big sets as well. For a man whose job was to build visual effects, he was like, do you really need to do a set extension? Couldn't you just build another 50 foot of the set? And I'm like, Richard, it's going to cost a fortune. But he said, but it's going to look great.
Yes. I see.
Martin Hunter, who was my editor, and I, we had a hell of a job on our hands to edit a movie of this kind of complexity with this many visual effects in it in time to get it ready for the release. And I think the kind of decisions that you often make as a director, where you're more contemplative, where you think about, should I have cut that scene? Should I not? Should we try the scene back in again? Let's watch the movie with the scene back in. We didn't have time to do all of that because we were just trying to get the mechanics of getting the movie released right. So I think definitely I trimmed things that I probably shouldn't have trimmed. There were great scenes that kind of bit the dust that I wish we'd kept. Just to have 3 weeks to cut it wasn't enough. So the movie, undoubtedly, when we first screened it, was too long and it had too much fat. But then, when the test results came back and people said it's too long, you go back in, but we only had like 1 week to turn around another cut. So we made lots of cuts, but we probably cut too far. We tested the second version of the movie. That did better. And then we did a third version of the movie, and that was the movie that we released. It's not the movie it would have been if we'd taken 10 weeks to cut it rather than 4 weeks to cut it, but it's still a damn good movie, and I'm very, very proud of it. And, it would be a different film, certainly. But can I say it would have been a much better film? I don't know. I'm not sure. There's that saying, movies are never finished, just abandoned. You could cut a movie forever, and you talk to directors, they always would want to go back and redo something. Oh, I had an idea. Oh, why didn't I do this? I've never kind of led a concerted effort to try and go back and find all of that stuff. I mean, when you cut on film, you pull the film apart and you physically change it. It's not like when you cut on digital, you have all of the previous versions of the movie saved. So a lot of what we did, the only real record of it is on VHS tapes that were done as kind of safeties, so that if we wanted to go back, we could kind of recreate what we'd done before. But I think at this stage, really, to assemble a new version of the movie that kind of reinstates it, you would have to kind of reshoot some of that material, because I don't think it really exists anymore. Paramount Studios, they were very excited to be doing a scary movie in space. Everyone was very supportive of the movie, but I do feel, because they were involved in Titanic and so much of their attention seemed to be on Titanic, I don't know who was watching dailies, if anybody. And I think when I first screened the movie for them, there was definitely a sense of shock as to what they had on their hands. And I think that sense of shock was probably because they weren't fully aware of the footage that we were shooting and the direction I was pushing the movie in. Because I was definitely pushing it in a darker direction than they had imagined. And equally, they didn't really know how to market it. But I think, the accelerated post-production that we had also meant it was an accelerated marketing process. By God, I loved the film. And I still love it. I mean, I love it probably more and more. It was a movie I was immensely proud of. And I was immensely proud of the audience reactions that it evoked as well. People were just terrified of it. It kind of does something that Alien did, which is it kills all the people you're expecting to survive. It kind of really, if you're a genre fan, you don't quite know what to expect, which I think is, when you work within genre, you realize genre audiences are so smart. They've seen everything. If you can be one step ahead of them and deliver something that they're not expecting, then I think you've really done your job as a filmmaker.